was already at the altar when the church doors opened and everyone stopped breathing. Jesse was 15 minutes late. My bouquet shook in my hands. I told myself it was nerves. It wasn't. His mother, Gloria, marched down the aisle in white, the exact dress I had designed. Same lace sleeves. Same pearl buttons. Every detail copied perfectly. The guests went dead silent. My bridesmaids froze. Gloria didn't look at me once. She walked straight to the priest, smiling like she owned the church, and announced, "I'm here to protect my son from a mistake he doesn't see yet." Jesse came running in. "Mom, stop." She raised one arm and cut him off before he could reach me. He stood there with guilt and weakness written all over his face. I handed my bouquet to my maid of honor and walked straight past Gloria. I leaned toward the wedding coordinator. "Give her everything she wants," I said calmly. "And the bill too." No one knew I had spent months preparing for this. My name is Rhoda. I'm 31 years old. And that wedding disaster wasn't where the story began. It was only where everything finally broke open. Jesse and I had been together for 4 years. We got engaged on a quiet beach trip, just the two of us, with a ring he had chosen himself. I was happy. I thought we both were. But from the very first dinner I had with his family, something felt wrong. Gloria hugged me with a smile that never reached her eyes. She asked questions that sounded polite but were loaded underneath. She watched me the way a judge watches a defendant. Over time the comments got sharper. I started doubting myself. Was I too loud? Too casual? Not refined enough for her son? I tried to fit in. For 4 long years I tried. Then weeks before the wedding, I reached over to silence Jesse's ringing phone and saw a text from Gloria. Few words. And they changed everything. The message read, "The wedding day is the perfect time." Jesse snatched the phone from my hand faster than I expected. He said it was about the seating arrangement, something about his Uncle Pete and a table near the back. I said okay. I didn't believe him. I had learned to read Jesse's face over 4 years. There was a small twitch near his left eye when he wasn't being straight with me. It was there right then. So was the way he looked just past my shoulder instead of at me. That night, after he fell asleep, I sat in our kitchen with a cold cup of tea and turned those words over in my mind. The wedding day is the perfect time. For what? A seating chart doesn't need a perfect time. That message felt urgent. Intentional. Like a countdown. I told myself I was being paranoid. I tried to sleep. And when morning came earlier than expected, I went to the living room and opened his laptop. Jesse and I shared a laptop for bookings and bills. I wasn't snooping. I just needed to check one email. But when I opened the browser, the last tab was still loaded. A draft folder under an email address I had never seen. It was Jesse's name with a string of numbers. An account I didn't know existed. I almost closed it. Part of me wishes I had. Instead I scrolled. There were dozens of emails between Jesse and Gloria going back 18 months. They talked about me like I was a problem to manage. How to handle the situation. How to delay things without causing a scene. How to make sure I never became too settled in their world. I read every single one with my hands shaking. Then I saw a message near the top of the thread. The subject line was 2 words. The replacement. My heart sank straight through the floor. I opened the email and read every word twice. Gloria's plan was simple and deliberate. She wanted to create a moment so embarrassing, so public, that I would walk away on my own. No messy confrontation. No difficult breakup. Just me humiliated into disappearing. Jesse would look like the innocent party in a broken engagement. Gloria would play the heartbroken mother who had tried to warn everyone. And I would simply vanish, too ashamed to push back. They had discussed timing, location, and who to involve. One email from Gloria read, "If we do this right, she'll be the one who walks." I sat at that kitchen table for a long time. Then I remembered something Jesse's cousin had mentioned once, casually, that Jesse had been engaged before. That woman had simply disappeared after the relationship ended. No one knew the full story. I closed the laptop. I sneaked back to Jesse's phone. And I started searching for her name. Her name was Wendy. She wasn't hard to find. The following morning, I met her for coffee at a small cafe 2 towns over. She arrived looking calm and steady, like someone who had done a lot of healing. She ordered black coffee and got to the point quickly. Gloria did the same thing to me, she said. Just less dramatically. Wendy explained how Gloria had gone through her messages, whispered poison into Jesse's ear, and quietly dismantled everything good between them. One day Jesse simply ended things. No real explanation. Just over. Then Wendy pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots, voice memos, and a message Gloria had sent her directly. The last line of that message read, "This time I'll make sure she can't fight back." This time. That meant there had been others. I drove home from that cafe knowing exactly what I was dealing with. Gloria wasn't just difficult. She was calculating. She had done this before, and she had gotten away with it every time. I wasn't going to let that happen again. I didn't confront Jesse. Not yet. Instead, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my oldest friend, Nora, who was also my maid of honor. I told her everything. She didn't panic. She just said, "Tell me what you need and I'll be there." The second call was to a family lawyer named Mr. Peters, recommended by a colleague who had used him during a difficult divorce. He agreed to meet me that same afternoon. The third call was to my own bank, to move my personal savings into an account only I could access. That evening, I laid out everything in front of Mr. Peters, the emails, the screenshots, the voice memo Wendy had shared. He listened carefully, asked precise questions, and then told me something I hadn't expected. "You likely won't owe a single dollar if this wedding falls apart," he said. "But depending on who signed the venue contracts, someone else might owe quite a lot." He paused and looked at me steadily. "Do you know who handled the paperwork for the ceremony?" Mr. Peters explained the clause carefully. Most wedding venues include a primary responsibility agreement in their contracts. That document names one person as the financial guarantor, the one legally on the hook if the event is disrupted or canceled after the final deposit. Catering minimums, floral arrangements, the venue fee, the sound system, staff overtime, the photographer, all of it falls on whoever signed as primary. I thought back to 6 months before the wedding. Gloria had offered to take care of the venue paperwork. She said it with such warmth, such generosity. I was managing 100 other details and I was grateful to have one task lifted off my plate. I had handed her the vendor file without a second thought. "Did she sign anything?" Mr. Peters asked. I slid a folder across his desk, one I had grabbed on my way out the door. He opened it and ran one finger down the signature line at the bottom of the primary contract. There was Gloria's name, written in her own hand, as the sole financial guarantor. Mr. Peters looked up slowly. She signed everything. 1 week before the wedding, Jesse's family hosted a dinner at their house. I went. I smiled. I acted like everything was perfectly fine. Gloria was in rare form that evening. She accidentally knocked a full glass of red wine directly onto my cream blouse while reaching past me, then laughed and handed me a paper towel. Everyone pretended it was clumsy. It wasn't. Later, she made a pointed comment about my career, something small and sharp about women who work too many hours making poor wives. Jesse laughed softly. He didn't say a word in my defense. I kept my phone in my lap all evening with the voice recorder running. By the time we left, I had nearly 40 minutes of audio. Snide remarks. Whispered instructions to Jesse. A moment near the hallway where Gloria told someone on the phone that I was temporary. On the drive home, Jesse stared at the road ahead and said in a flat and practiced voice, "I think we need to rethink this marriage, Rhoda." I turned and looked at him. And I finally understood what I had been refusing to see. I looked at Jesse in that car and felt something shift inside me. Not sadness. Not panic. Something quieter and colder than both. Clarity. For months I had been making excuses for him, telling myself he was a good man suffocated by a controlling mother, filling the gaps with my own hope, choosing to believe in a version of him he had never actually been. But sitting there, listening to him recite words that sounded rehearsed, I saw it plainly. Jesse wasn't a victim of Gloria. He was her partner. He had chosen her every single time, in every small moment when he could have stood beside me instead. I didn't argue with him that night. I said calmly, "Let's talk about it after the wedding." He relaxed. He thought he still had me fooled. He didn't. Over the next 2 days, I quietly removed my name from our shared subscriptions and copied every important document to my personal cloud. I said nothing about any of it. Then I noticed something new. Money was quietly leaving our shared account. The first withdrawal was small enough to miss if you weren't paying close attention. I was paying close attention. Over 4 days, Jesse moved money out of our joint account in 6 separate amounts, each one just below the threshold that triggers an automatic bank alert. He had thought it through carefully. I called Mr. Peters immediately. "Don't touch the account," he said. "Don't move a single dollar. Just document every transaction with a timestamp." I took screenshots on my phone, printed them at the library, and stored copies in 2 places, one at Nora's apartment and one in a sealed envelope with Mr. Peters. The total Jesse had transferred came to just over $9,000. Then I noticed the detail that turned my stomach completely cold. The last transfer, the largest one, $3,000, had cleared at 8:14 in the morning. On the day of our wedding, he had been moving money out while I was sitting in the makeup chair, while I was pinning my veil. He had been planning his exit right down to the very hour. 2 weeks before the wedding, my dressmaker called me in a panic. She had received a change request. Someone had contacted the boutique claiming to be my personal assistant and approved alterations to my dress design. The lace sleeves were being removed. The bodice was being restructured. I had no assistant. I had made no such call. I told her to stop all changes immediately and restore my original design exactly as planned. She apologized. I stayed calm. Then I started making my own calls. Within 2 days I had pieced together the full picture. Gloria had hired a private seamstress to recreate my dress. Not a perfect match, but close enough to be startling from the front of a church. She had also contacted 3 vendors claiming I had approved last-minute changes. None of them had verified with me directly. Then one evening, walking past the kitchen, I stopped. Gloria was on the phone, her voice smooth and certain. "Don't worry," she said quietly. "I'll be the one walking down that aisle." I stepped back from the doorway and stood completely still, letting those words settle. Gloria hadn't just planned to humiliate me. She had planned an entire performance. The dress, the walk, the vows. She had cast herself in my role and quietly rehearsed every detail. That night, scrolling through the wedding's private guest message thread, I noticed a name I didn't recognize. Amber. She was listed as Jesse's childhood friend and had been added to the group by Gloria 6 weeks earlier, without mentioning it to me. I looked her up. Her profile was full of soft, carefully chosen photos. I couldn't find a single trace of a real connection to Jesse's past. The next morning I sent her a friendly message. "Hey, I don't think we've met properly yet. Are you coming to the wedding?" She didn't respond right away. But the following evening, a message came through that made me set my phone down on the table and stare at the ceiling for a very long time. "You need to know what your fiancé promised me." I met Amber at a park near her apartment on a Tuesday afternoon. She seemed nervous when she arrived, glancing around like she was afraid of being seen. I told her she could trust me. I wasn't angry at her. I could see clearly that she was another person Gloria had positioned like a piece in her plan. Amber told me that Jesse had been messaging her for 2 months. He said the engagement was falling apart, that he was being pushed into a marriage he wasn't sure about. He told her that once the dust settled, he hoped to see where things could go between them. He had suggested more than once that the wedding might not even happen. I asked if she had kept any proof. She nodded and held out her phone. Every message was there. His name, his words, his promises in plain blue text. I photographed every screen carefully. I thanked Amber, walked to my car, and sat quietly for a moment. Then I called Mr. Peters. "We have everything we need," I said. "Let's finalize the plan." The night before the wedding, I laid my dress across the bedroom chair and sat on the edge of the bed, looking at it. I wasn't nervous. I was focused. Earlier that day, I had spent an hour on the phone with Mr. Peters going over every step. He confirmed that the venue contract was legally solid. Gloria's signature as primary guarantor was fully binding. The moment I formally withdrew, every vendor bill would route directly to her. He had prepared one clean document. All I had to do was hand it to the coordinator at the right moment. I packed a bag ahead of time, documents, a change of clothes, my phone charger, a photo of my parents, and sent it with Nora to keep in her car overnight. Then, at 11:42 that night, my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. 7 words. Stay home tomorrow if you know what's good for you. I set my phone face down on the nightstand, and I went to sleep. I woke early on my wedding morning and made myself a quiet breakfast. I sat with a cup of tea and watched the light come in through the kitchen window, feeling completely still inside. At 7:15 my phone buzzed. It was my makeup artist, calling before I had even texted her. "Rhoda," she said, sounding flustered. "I got a call this morning. Someone said you'd canceled your appointment and tried to rebook the slot." She gave me the name Gloria Hartman. Jesse's mother had tried to cancel my wedding morning appointment and take the time for herself. I thanked my makeup artist, confirmed nothing had changed, and kept our original time. Then I finished my tea and got dressed. Part of me had imagined walking away quietly, staying home and letting the whole thing collapse from a distance. But the anonymous message the night before had settled something in me. Disappearing quietly was exactly what they wanted. They needed me absent, confused, and unable to respond. I was going to that church, completely on my own terms. The ceremony was scheduled for 11 in the morning. I arrived early, walked through the main entrance and took my place at the altar. Nora stood behind me with the coordinator's folder tucked carefully under her arm. My bouquet was in my hands. My veil was pinned perfectly. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Jesse was not. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 15. The guests grew restless. I kept my face calm and my shoulders straight. Then the main door swung open. Not for Jesse but for Gloria. She walked down the aisle in her copied dress, smiling softly at guests on both sides, as though she belonged there far more than I did. Jesse stumbled in behind her, pale and breathless, calling out, "Mom, stop," in a voice too weak to carry any real weight. She ignored him completely and walked straight to the priest. I stood at that altar and watched every second of it. His eyes eventually found mine. He looked helpless, frozen. He was never going to stop her. So I let her finish, and I handed Nora my bouquet. When Gloria stopped speaking, the church had gone completely still. I walked in calmly through the side door, approached the coordinator, and handed her the folder Mr. Peters had prepared. It contained one document. A legal notice confirming that as primary financial guarantor of the event, Gloria Hartman held full financial responsibility for all contracted costs, effective upon my formal withdrawal. I signed the form right there. The coordinator read it carefully, then looked up at me with wide eyes. I gave her a small nod. She stepped away. Within 2 minutes, the head of catering appeared at Gloria's side with a clipboard. Then the floral coordinator. Then the venue manager. One by one, they approached her quietly, each holding a document and waiting calmly for her attention. Gloria's smile began to slip. She looked at the first invoice. Then the second. The number on the third made her hand shake visibly. The full cost of a 200-person wedding, every flower, every plate, every hour of hired staff, was now legally and entirely hers to pay. Gloria's composure broke fast and loud. She demanded to know what was happening. She grabbed an invoice and waved it at the venue manager, her voice rising until it filled the entire church. "This is entrapment," she shouted. "She planned this. She set me up." Guests were on their feet. Many were recording on their phones. Parents were quietly moving children toward the exits. Gloria threw the bouquet she had been carrying. It struck a waiter's tray and sent glasses sliding across the surface. The waiter caught one before it hit the floor. Jesse stepped forward then. He put his hand on his mother's arm and told the crowd it was all a misunderstanding, that I had clearly lost my mind, that everyone should please calm down. That was his worst mistake. Because every person in that church had watched Gloria march down the aisle in a copied white dress. They had heard her announce she was replacing me. Jesse defending her didn't make him look loyal. It made him look exactly like what he was. Every camera in the room was still recording. I left through the side door. Nora was outside with the car already running and my bag in the back seat. I pulled off my veil, set my bouquet on the seat beside me, and we drove away before the shouting inside had fully stopped. I felt lighter than I had in months. My phone was already filling with messages from guests. Some were confused. Some were furious on my behalf. A few came from people who had clearly been on Gloria's side until about 20 minutes ago. I didn't answer any of them. I turned my phone face down and watched the streets pass quietly outside the window. 40 minutes later, Nora and I were sitting in a diner 2 towns away eating eggs and not saying much when my phone rang. It was Mr. Peters. "She filed a complaint this afternoon," he said. "Claims you deliberately deceived her. She's asking for damages, $40,000 for emotional distress." I set my fork down slowly. "She's suing me," I said. "She's trying to," he replied. "But you won't believe what she included in the filing." Mr. Peters explained it carefully. Gloria's lawsuit claimed I had manipulated her into signing the venue contract without fully understanding its terms. She said I had acted in bad faith, caused deliberate public humiliation, and ruined what should have been her son's wedding day. But the moment her filing was reviewed by the court, my evidence went in right alongside it. Every email between her and Jesse, the voice recordings from the family dinner, the message she had sent Wendy, the phone conversation where she said she would be the one walking down that aisle, the screenshots Amber had given me, Jesse's bank transfers, including the final one cleared the morning of the wedding. The judge reviewing the preliminary filing asked Gloria's attorney one simple question: "Is your client aware this evidence exists?" The lawsuit did not survive the week. Instead, Gloria now faced a counterclaim for harassment, financial deception, and attempted fraud. Her own filing had handed Mr. Peters exactly the opening he needed. 3 days after the lawsuit collapsed, Jesse appeared at my front door. I opened the door and looked at him. He hadn't slept. His shirt was wrinkled. He was holding a paper coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "Can we talk?" he asked. I stepped outside and pulled the door almost shut behind me. I didn't invite him in. He talked for a long time. He blamed his mother's grip on him, the weight of family pressure, the fear of disappointing everyone around him. He said he had been weak. He said he hadn't realized how far Gloria would take things. He never once said he was sorry for what he had done to me specifically. When he finally ran out of words, I reached into my pocket and held out his ring. He stared at it. "Rhoda, take it, Jesse." He took it slowly like it weighed more than it should. Then he looked at me and said quietly, "You'll regret this. You'll never do better than me." I didn't answer. I stepped back inside and closed the door softly behind me. The weeks that followed were the most peaceful I had felt in years. I moved into a small apartment on the other side of the city. It had wide windows and a kitchen I actually wanted to cook in. I bought plants. I started sleeping through the night again without waking up tense and braced for something. Nora came over every weekend for the first month. We watched old films and ordered too much food and talked about everything that wasn't Jesse or Gloria. I started seeing a therapist, not because I was falling apart, but because I wanted to understand how I had stayed so long, how I had kept making room for people who were taking up far more space than they deserved. My therapist was patient and careful. She helped me see that loyalty and foolishness can look identical from the inside. A job offer arrived. A senior position at a company I had quietly admired for years. I accepted it without hesitating. For the first time in a very long time, I felt like I was moving in a direction I had chosen entirely for myself. Then Nora texted me a link with a single message. "You need to see this." The video had been posted by a guest named Carl, someone from Jesse's side of the family I had spoken to maybe twice at family events. He had recorded the entire ceremony from the third row. The video started with Gloria walking down the aisle, serene and smiling in her copied white dress. It ended with her throwing the bouquet and screaming about entrapment. Everything in between was captured in steady, unsparing detail. By the time Nora sent me the link, the video had over 2 million views. The comments were overwhelming. Thousands of people sided with me before they even knew my name. The clip had been shared on every major platform, reacted to and discussed by people all over the world. Gloria's face was in every frame. Jesse's weak and silent presence appeared in quite a few of them too. 3 days after the video went up, a journalist from a national publication sent a message to my personal email. "We'd like to tell your story," she wrote. "On your terms. Whenever you're ready." I read it twice. Then I smiled and started typing back. 6 months later, I sat across from that journalist in a bright, warm cafe and told the whole story from beginning to end. The article ran the following week. By the weekend it had been shared hundreds of thousands of times. I heard about the fallout through mutual contacts and the occasional message I chose to open. Gloria's lawsuit had collapsed entirely. Between legal fees and the wedding vendor she now owed, she was carrying a debt that would take years to clear. The venue had taken her to small claims court and won without much of a fight. Jesse had moved back into his childhood home. He was no longer working at the firm where we had once talked about building a future together. Nobody seemed sure what he was doing with his days. And me? I had a job I loved, an apartment full of morning light, a life I had built with my own hands for my own reasons. I had never once regretted walking out of that church. The last line of my article read, "I didn't ruin her life. I just stopped letting her ruin mine."